Device 7 is by making the soul bold to venture upon the occasions of sin. The first remedy is quite easy to apply, but nonetheless is hard to implement. The first remedy reads, to dwell upon those scriptures that do expressly command us to avoid the occasions of sin and the least appearance of evil. 1 Thessalonians 5:22 says, abstain from all appearance of evil. One of the reasons why it's so very important to abstain from even the appearance of sin, to avoid it and to be removed from it, is the pattern of thinking and of habit that it builds in our life. Sometimes you find yourself near the occasion of sin, but that is not the same thing as actually succumbing to the temptation. This is a good means to prevent our being deceived with false doctrines, corrupt affections indulged in the heart, and evil practices allowed of in the life will greatly tend to promote fatal errors of the mind. Purity of heart and integrity of life will dispose men to receive the truth in the love of it. We should therefore abstain from evil and all appearances of evil, from sin, and that which looks like sin, leads to it, or borders upon it. He who is not shy of the appearance of sin, who shuns not the occasions of sin, and who avoids not the temptations and approaches to sin, will not long abstain from the actual commission of sin. There's a pattern there, a growing pattern. It develops when you're willing to come to a close encounter with evil or sin. You're indulging your heart, and that's really where the battle begins, isn't it? You're not going to be tempted for things you don't enjoy. If you're willing to embrace the occasions of sin, thinking that you're strong, you've already acknowledged that your heart is corrupt, and it has a growing corruption in it. You're indulging the wickedness in your heart, even though the sins of the body haven't been engaged at this time, or however the occasion might work itself out. Flee from every appearance of sin and get away from it, because if you don't, you're only indulging your heart. You're only flirting with disaster. Men have a natural inclination to trust in their own strength when it comes to facing some form of evil or temptation. They love to believe that this time's going to be different. When you say to yourself upon the occasions of sin, this time is different. I'm fit. I'm strong. I can handle this. You're already trusting in your own strength. Oftentimes, it is easy to believe that this time is different. This time you're stronger. This time you can handle it. But keep in mind, the device that Satan is employing is not at first to actually get us to sin, but to draw us near the occasions of sinning. That's how the device read, making the soul bold to venture upon the occasions of sin. You see, Satan's no fool in this regard. He knows that if he were to tempt you outright, that you wouldn't do it. But if he can draw you near the occasion of sin first, get you to trust in your strength and your resolve, he's won the battle already, because he knows that having you do so will indulge your heart and grow evil. At an early stage of temptation, the argument of Satan is to present you as strong. Not as weak, not as ready to fall, but as strong, ready for you to admit that you can handle it this time. He'll say, don't worry about the actual sin itself, as you can handle it. Be bold and show your strength in this situation. The short argument to this line of reasoning is the word no. No, I'm not that strong. I'm not going to indulge and fertilize the evil in my heart. I'm not going to cause it to be strengthened inside me by loving the lust inside while yet trying to avoid it on the outside. No, when Satan brings this line of reasoning, we must be very clear and say, no, I'm not going there. I'm not going to do it. I am going to abstain from the appearance of evil. If you won't, well then, what are you really doing? You're flirting with sin. You're exposing your soul to trouble. There's only one end in mind when Satan brings you or attempts to convince you of your strength, and he brings you near the occasions of sin, and that's to cause your soul to fall. He has your ruin, your destruction, and your hurt in mind. Why believe him? Why believe the lie that this time I'm much stronger, this time I can withstand the temptation? It's all a lie. You can't. Don't do it. He's lying. The warnings in Scripture, either given with some direct command or through some implicit example regarding the dalliances with sin, there are many. Lots of examples in the Scriptures. When you yield to this temptation, especially after being enlightened by the Word of God, you must really come to the conclusion that the love of sin inside you is quite powerful. You see, this is the real first step in understanding the need to flee sin, is that inside you is a nature that still loves sin. It no longer reigns over you with complete dominion, but it certainly remains strong within you. Residual sin lasts a long time. Every day you're here. And to dismiss the love of sin that you have is to remove from yourself one of the strongest tools you have. Acknowledging that you love sin is a good first step in understanding why it's important to avoid the occasions of sin and not to dare upon them. There really isn't any room in a Christian life for pompous self-righteousness. The root of this sort of confidence is pride. Pride that we have what it takes to face temptation and to weather the storm. Being strong is not what's going to get you through the temptation. Leaving it is what will get you through the temptation. The great comfort of the wicked is that their sins are hidden, that they're held in secret. When the wicked love to embrace sin, they do so because they know their sins are held in secret. No one will know. Most people are well pleased to cover their deeds. But even if this assumed secrecy were true, which it isn't because God sees these things, this section of Proverbs doesn't end with the idea that the wicked are capable of hiding in their sin. When we look at our life, when we look at what's happening around us, when we are bold to venture upon the occasions of sin, we must remember that God governs our paths. In verse 21, we see, "For the ways of a man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all his paths. His own iniquities entrap the wicked man, and he is caught in the cords of his sin. He shall die for lack of instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray." You see, this is the end of what is happening in Proverbs 5 in the instruction that we're given about fleeing from the immoral and the wicked woman. There is a great temptation to forget that God watches over all of our paths, the paths of the wicked and the paths of the righteous. He can ponder their path without sin. He has no trouble with that. We do. But we should leave it to God and put it in His hands to ponder the paths of the wicked, and not to be overly curious about their end, about their ways. Why are they doing that? Maybe I can learn from them. You're not to learn from them in this matter. You're to avoid those occasions. There's no prize given because in your own heart you believed your intentions were good, but in the end you came to ruin. There's a prize given for those who are smart enough to leave. He shall die for lack of instruction, the greatness of his folly he shall go astray. The words are as clear as they can be. Consider what God is doing. He is watching over all of your paths. He knows what's happening. He will ponder the paths of the wicked. He knows the end He has in mind for them. You don't need to spend your time thinking of it. In verse 14, "Do not enter the path of the wicked, and do not walk in the way of it. Avoid it. Do not travel on it. Turn away from it, and pass on. For they do not sleep unless they have done evil, and their sleep is taken away unless they make someone fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness, and drink the wine of violence." These are troubled machines. Do not enter the path of the wicked, for they do not sleep unless they have done evil. They look for ways to find and devise occasions that you might be trapped. So what do? When you find those occasions, when you encounter them, when your soul is made aware of them, well, don't enter their path. Do not walk in the way of evil. Avoid it. Do not travel on it. Turn away from it and pass on. Think, I've been down this path before. Trust me, I know what's happening. Well, do you remember what happened last time after you ventured upon those occasions of sin? What was the outcome then? Why would you think it's going to be any different? It's not going to be any different. It's not different this time. Run. Flee. Remedy number 2. That ordinarily there is no conquest over sin without the soul turning from the occasion of sin. Have you ever noticed that we tend to pray more for God to remove temptations from us than to remove the love of sin from us? Which is good. There's nothing wrong with praying that way. But you should be praying as well. Lord, help me not to love these things. Then I wouldn't be looking for them. I wouldn't be excited when I found them and put in this conundrum. It is impossible for that man to get the conquest of sin that plays and sports with the occasions of sin. God will not remove the temptation except you turn from the occasion. It is a just and righteous thing with God that he should fall into the pit that will adventure to dance upon the brink of the pit, and that he should be a slave to sin that will not flee from the occasions of sin. As long as there is fuel in our hearts for a temptation, we cannot be secure. He that hath gunpowder about him had need keep far away from sparkles. God will not remove the temptation except you turn from the occasion. It's difficult to resist temptation on a regular basis. It comes our way, and that love of sin comes up and says, I desire this. I like it. I'm going to keep my distance and just stay along the side. Well, if you're going to dance on the rim of the pit, is there any reason to be surprised that you should occasionally fall in? Remedy 3. That other precious saints that were once glorious on earth and are now triumphing in heaven have turned from the occasion of sin as hell itself. You see, they knew the end of sin was not some slight occasion, not some difficulty in the road, but they had a view of sin, that to sin and to succumb to the temptation around us was to invite hell itself, the weight of hell. You see, what is the point of hell? Except a place to punish sinners eternally from what they love. That's the point of it. And so the men that are listed in those verses there, they saw right through the occasions of sin as offending a righteous God and requiring the death of his son in order for them to be holy. Joseph in Genesis 39, what happened when Potiphar's wife came calling? I think Joseph was probably wise enough to know that this was not going to end well when the boss's wife turns on you. You don't want to ever come between a man and his wife. Who's he going to believe? Even if he knows she's wrong, he's not going to believe you. He was trapped, and she knew it. He knew it. So would it have been more convenient to get this out of the way, to maintain his position? No. He saw right through it and said, this is hell coming to my door. I'm out of here. And he paid the price for it. He wasn't bold to venture upon the occasion of sin. How about Job in chapter 31 when he said, I have made a covenant with my eyes. Why then should I look upon a young woman? Job was clear. He said, God didn't make me strong. I'm a weak man. I have temptations. Are you willing to admit that it's the same for you, that you have those temptations? You're going to keep away from these things? You're going to be smart about fighting the battle? Or are you going to be proud and say, this time is different? How about David in Psalm 26, 4 and 5? I have not sat with idolatrous mortals, nor will I go in with hypocrites. I have hated the assembly of evildoers and will not sit with the wicked. We see these examples of people who had a real and strong hatred of sin and that which was evil. They weren't apathetic toward it. They weren't indifferent toward it. They had an active hatred for sin. And they knew that being bold to enter upon the occasion of sin was being bold to enter upon hell itself. And they knew well enough to avoid it. When we're faced with these temptations and these occasions and they present themselves, there's a danger of wanting to be moderate in our response, be tempered in how we handle it. Well, Joseph ran. Job was clear and said, I'm not going to go to those occasions that sin. David said, I hate the assembly of evildoers. I'm not going to go to the assembly of evildoers and hate their deeds. I hate the assembly of evildoers. Learn to hate sin and love that which is righteous.